I walked into the country club ballroom for my son's wedding when I heard her voice slice through the crowd like a razor blade. "Here comes that dirty old rancher again," she said, not bothering to lower her voice. "I swear every time he shows up, the whole place smells like cattle and manure. How does Brady even tolerate him?" The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. My face burned hot as a branding iron. My hands went cold despite the summer heat. For a moment, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stand there like a fool in my best suit, feeling smaller than I had in 58 years. I wanted to turn around and walk right back out that door, drive the 3 hours back to my ranch in Glacier County, and pretend this whole nightmare never happened. But before I could move, my son Brady grabbed my arm and pulled me close. "Stay calm, Dad," he whispered, his voice steady as bedrock. "In 1 hour, everything changes." What did he know that I didn't? What was my boy planning that could possibly fix this mess? My name is Mason Fletcher. I'm 58 years old, and I've spent every day of my adult life building something real with these hands on 2,800 acres of Montana cattle ranch. The Fletcher Ranch sits where the Rocky Mountain foothills meet endless grassland, where morning mist rises off crystal streams and cattle graze under skies so vast they make a man remember his place in this world. This land isn't just dirt and grass, it's legacy carved from sweat and sacrifice. My grandfather homesteaded this place in 1923 with nothing but determination and a borrowed plow. My father expanded it, survived the drought of the 50s, built it into something that could support a family. When he passed 15 years ago, he left me more than property. He left me responsibility. The responsibility to keep Fletcher land in Fletcher hands. To pass something meaningful to the next generation. To honor the men who came before by ensuring their work wasn't for nothing. I had planned to pass that legacy to my children, and God willing, to my granddaughter Sophie. Sophie. That little 9-year-old firecracker is the light of my world. Been living with me and her Aunt Madison since her daddy died in that car wreck 3 years back. Every morning before school, she's out in the barn learning to saddle her horse Buttercup, chattering away about her dreams of becoming a veterinarian who helps all the animals on Grandpa's ranch. Weekends, she follows me around like a shadow, asking a million questions about everything from why cattle need salt licks to how you can tell when a storm's coming by watching the clouds. That child carries our family's future in her bright smile and curious eyes. Everything I do, every decision I make, I think about Sophie first. What kind of world am I leaving her? What kind of security? What kind of foundation to build her own dreams on? My daughter Madison, 35 now, teaches elementary school in town and helps me raise Sophie. She's got her mother's gentle heart and fierce protective streak. Never married, says she's too busy between her students and helping keep our family together. Madison moved back to the ranch after Linda died, said Sophie needed stability and I needed backup. She was right on both counts. My son Brady, 33, is an agricultural engineer. Graduated from Montana State with honors. Could work anywhere in the country but chose to stay close. He's got offices in Billings, specializes in sustainable ranching practices and water management systems. Smart as a whip, that boy, and twice as dedicated to preserving ranch life for the next generation. Even with his city job, Brady comes home every weekend rolling up his sleeves to work alongside me mending fences, rotating cattle between pastures, fixing equipment that's held together more by prayer than proper parts. The bond between a father and son, built on honest work and shared purpose, there's nothing stronger in this world. My wife Linda was the heart and soul of everything for 25 years. Lost her to cancer 4 years ago, and I still catch myself setting a place for her at dinner or turning to tell her something before remembering she's gone. Linda held our family together through drought years and good years alike, made sure the kids grew up knowing they were loved, knowing they belonged to something bigger than themselves. After Linda passed, the ranch felt too quiet, too empty. That's when Madison moved back with Sophie, and suddenly there was laughter in the kitchen again, small boots by the back door, homework spread across the dining room table. Sophie brought life back to this place when I thought it might die with my wife. Then 18 months ago, Brady met Tiffany Morrison. I remember that first dinner clear as yesterday. Brady insisted on bringing her to our usual spot at Mountain View Restaurant in town, his way of saying this mattered to him. Tiffany walked in wearing clothes that probably cost more than I spend on feed in a month. Beautiful woman, I'll give her that. Polished like a new penny, with the kind of sophisticated confidence that comes from growing up with money and moving in circles where image is everything. She smiled all the right smiles, said all the right things about loving Montana's natural beauty and admiring the simple, honest lifestyle of ranch families. But something in my gut, that old rancher's instinct honed by 6 decades of reading weather, animals, and people, started sending up warning flags from the moment she sat down. The questions she asked seemed innocent enough on the surface, interested, engaging, but underneath each carefully worded inquiry was something that made my skin crawl. How many acres do you own, Mason? That must be worth quite a bit in today's market. Has Brady mentioned what he might inherit someday? Do you have your estate planning all set up? That's so important at your age, isn't it? She never once asked about the work we do, never showed curiosity about the cattle operation or the land management challenges we face, never inquired about Brady's childhood memories or what he loved about growing up here. Every single question circled back to money, property values, inheritance, and what would eventually transfer from my generation to his. But I bit my tongue that first night, told myself I was being an overprotective father, reading too much into innocent conversation. Young people today are more direct about financial matters, I reasoned. Maybe this was just her way of understanding what kind of family Brady came from. I was dead wrong. 2 weeks later, she brought her father to meet us. Shane Morrison stepped out of a black Mercedes SUV wearing a $1,000 suit and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He carried himself like a man who'd made his fortune buying and selling other people's dreams, assessing everything around him for its monetary potential. Shane made it clear within the first 10 minutes that he was a real estate developer from Seattle, specializing in what he called converting underutilized rural properties into profitable ventures. The way he said it, looking around our ranch like he was already measuring it for subdivision plots, made my blood run cold. During dinner, Shane dominated the conversation with talk about land values in Montana, how the railroad expansion would transform the economy, how smart investors were positioning themselves to capitalize on the infrastructure boom. He spoke about our ranch like it was already his to discuss, throwing around numbers and projections that made my head spin. Properties like this one, he said, gesturing toward our pastures with his wine glass. They're sitting on untapped gold mines. Railroad access will increase values by 300 to 400% over the next 3 years. The trick is knowing when to liquidate for maximum profit. Liquidate. Like our family's legacy was nothing more than stocks and bonds to be traded. Brady sat quiet through most of this, but I caught him watching his girlfriend and her father with an expression I couldn't quite read. When Shane asked pointed questions about our water rights, mineral rights, and debt structure, I saw my son's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. After they left, I pulled Brady aside on the front porch. The Montana evening was cooling down, stars beginning to show themselves in the darkening sky. This was usually our time for easy conversation, sharing the day's work and tomorrow's plans. "Son," I said, choosing my words carefully, "something doesn't feel right about this situation. That girl isn't asking about you, about your life, about what makes you happy. She's conducting a financial audit of our family." Brady was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the pastures where our cattle were settling in for the night. Finally, he looked at me with those serious eyes that reminded me so much of his mother. "I know, Dad. I've been noticing things too." "What kind of things?" "Questions about the ranch that go way beyond normal curiosity. She knows details about Montana land law that she shouldn't know unless she's been researching it. Last week, she asked me about the specific acres we own, whether we have any liens against the property, how the inheritance would be structured if something happened to you." My stomach dropped. "She asked you that directly?" "Not directly. She's too smart for that. It's always wrapped up in concern for my future, or interest in understanding my family background." But Brady paused, running his hands through his hair the way he'd done since he was a little boy wrestling with difficult problems. "Dad, I think they're planning something." The next few months confirmed our worst fears. Tiffany became a fixture around the ranch, always with her phone out, always asking questions, always measuring and calculating things that were none of her business. She took photos of everything, claiming she wanted to capture the rustic beauty for their future wedding album. But I caught her photographing our property markers, our equipment, our storage facilities, things that had nothing to do with wedding memories and everything to do with asset evaluation. Shane visited monthly, always with some excuse about getting to know Brady's family better. But his conversations inevitably turned to land development opportunities in Montana, the coming infrastructure boom, and how landowners needed to think strategically about their holdings. During one particularly infuriating visit, he cornered me in the barn while I was treating a sick calf. "Mason," he said, leaning against the stall door like we were old friends. "You've built something impressive here, but maintaining a ranch this size at your age, it's got to be exhausting. Have you considered what happens when you can't handle the physical demands anymore? I kept working, not trusting myself to look at him. I managed just fine. Of course, but realistically, Brady's got his career in the city, Madison's got her teaching job, they can't drop everything to run a cattle operation. And Sophie, sweet little Sophie, she'll need resources for college, for her future. Sometimes the most loving thing a patriarch can do is convert his assets into liquid wealth for the next generation. Convert his assets. Liquid wealth. This man talked about our family's legacy like it was a problem to be solved, an inefficiency to be corrected. I straightened up and fixed him with the kind of look I reserved for coyotes prowling too close to the herd. Mr. Morrison, my family's future is not your concern. This ranch has supported Fletchers for 3 generations, and God willing, it'll support 3 more. His smile never wavered, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Of course. I'm just saying, options are important. Flexibility. The ability to adapt when circumstances change. The way he said when circumstances change sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the Montana weather. That night I called Madison into my office and told her everything. My daughter listened with the same careful attention she gave to troubled students, asking thoughtful questions and taking notes on a legal pad. "Dad," she said finally, "I think you need to have a serious conversation with Brady. This isn't paranoia. This sounds like a systematic evaluation of our assets. But what can we do?" Brady's in love with her. Young men don't listen to warnings about women they're planning to marry. Madison smiled, but there was steel in it. Brady's smarter than that. If he's already noticing inconsistencies, he'll figure this out. We just need to support him and protect ourselves in the meantime. She was right about Brady being smart. What I didn't know then was that my son was already 3 steps ahead of all of us. What I discovered 3 weeks before the wedding changed everything. Brady called me early on a Saturday morning, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Dad, can you come to my apartment in Billings? There's something I need to show you. Something you're not going to want to hear." The 2-hour drive felt like the longest of my life. My mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. Had Brady discovered something about Tiffany's past? About Shane's business dealings? Or was this about something else entirely? When I arrived at Brady's place, I found him sitting at his kitchen table with a young man I'd never met. The stranger had laptops and audio equipment spread across the surface, headphones and cables that looked like they belonged in a professional recording studio. "Dad, this is Cole Matthews," Brady said, his hand moving to my shoulder. "He's a sound engineer who's been helping me with something for the past month." Cole nodded respectfully but remained silent. He understood that whatever was about to unfold required careful handling. Brady took a deep breath, and I could see his hands trembling slightly as he reached for his laptop. "Dad, for the past 4 weeks, I've been recording conversations between Tiffany and her father. Private conversations they thought no one else could hear." My stomach dropped to my boots. "Recording how?" "Montana is a one-party consent state," Cole interjected quietly. "As long as Brady was present for the conversations, recording them is completely legal. We've been very careful about that." Brady's voice remained steady, but I could see the pain in his eyes. "I started getting suspicious after that dinner when Shane cornered you in the barn. Tiffany's behavior changed after that visit. She became more secretive, took calls in private, started asking more specific questions about the ranch's financial details." He paused, looking directly at me. "I installed a recording app on my phone. Started leaving it running during our conversations, especially when her father was around." "What did you find?" Instead of answering, Brady pressed play on the laptop. Tiffany's voice filled the room, crisp and clear through the speakers, discussing something with someone over the phone. "I'm marrying him for the land, nothing else. The old man is getting attached to me, which makes this easier. Once we get Brady to transfer the deed into our joint names, we'll push Mason into a nursing home and liquidate everything." The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the edge of the table to keep from falling over. My future daughter-in-law, the woman who'd kissed my cheek at Sunday dinners, who'd played games with Sophie, who'd listened to my stories about Linda with apparent sympathy, had just confessed to planning my destruction. "There's more," Brady said grimly, moving to the next file. Shane Morrison's voice came through the speakers next, confident and calculating. "The property appraisal came back at $4.2 million, but that's current market value. Once the railroad expansion is completed, we're looking at $12 million minimum, possibly 15. Mason Fletcher has no idea he's sitting on a gold mine." Tiffany's voice again, harder this time. "How long do we have to maintain this charade?" 18 months minimum, Shane replied. long enough to establish legal standing for the marriage, get Mason declared incompetent if necessary, and transfer assets. After that, Brady becomes irrelevant. We'll arrange a convenient divorce, keep the land, and move forward with development plans. I had to put my head in my hands. The calculated cruelty of it was overwhelming. These people had spent over a year studying my family, learning our weaknesses, planning our destruction with the same attention to detail I used for managing cattle rotations. "There's more," Brady said quietly. "Much more." The next recording was worse. Tiffany talking to someone about Sophie. The little brat is actually useful. Mason's completely wrapped around her finger. "We'll use that attachment when we need to manipulate him into signing documents. Tell him it's for Sophie's college fund or her future security. Old men will do anything for their granddaughters." That's when my composure finally broke. I stood up so fast the chair fell over backwards. "They're planning to use Sophie? To manipulate me through my granddaughter?" Brady nodded, his jaw set like granite. "It gets worse. They've been researching nursing homes, looking into legal precedents for declaring elderly ranchers incompetent, even consulting with lawyers about accelerating inheritance transfers." Cole spoke up for the first time since introductions. "We have over 40 hours of recorded conversations. Everything is time-stamped, authenticated, and completely admissible in court. This isn't just fraud conspiracy. This is elder abuse, exploitation, and grand theft." I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw something I'd never quite seen before. This wasn't the young man who'd grown up helping me with chores and asking questions about ranch management. This was a man who'd discovered betrayal at the deepest level and had the courage and intelligence to fight back. "What's the plan?" I asked. Brady's expression was calm, but his eyes burned with determination. "We expose them. Publicly. At the wedding, in front of everyone they've been lying to for 18 months. How? The country club has a presentation system for wedding slideshows and speeches. Cole's been working with the venue's tech staff. We'll have access to the audio system during the ceremony." Cole nodded. "Everything's already prepared. High-quality audio files, backup systems in case they try to interfere, and law enforcement standing by." "Law enforcement?" "Drew Patterson, the district attorney for Cascade County. I contacted him last week with preliminary evidence. He'll be attending as a guest, but he'll be ready to make arrests as soon as we present the evidence." I stared at my son, this man I'd raised who was now protecting our family with a level of sophistication and planning that took my breath away. "Brady, are you absolutely certain about this? Once we do this, there's no going back." "Dad," he said quietly, "they've already decided to destroy you, to steal everything Grandpa and Great-Grandpa built, to use Sophie as a weapon against you, and to throw me away like garbage once they get what they want. They made this choice. I'm just making sure everyone knows what that choice was." The morning of the wedding, I woke up before dawn on the ranch, walked out to the pasture where Linda's ashes were scattered, and had a long conversation with my wife about courage, justice, and protecting the people we love. By afternoon, I was standing in that ballroom, listening to my son's fiancée mock me in front of 180 guests, knowing that everything was about to change forever. The ceremony began at 2 p.m. sharp. Tiffany glided down the aisle in flowing white silk, her smile radiant with the confidence of someone who believed she was about to achieve everything she'd worked for. Shane walked beside her, his chest puffed with the pride of a man who thought he'd successfully orchestrated the perfect crime. The guests rose to their feet, and I watched the room fill with genuine smiles and tears. These were good people, family friends, neighbors from our community who'd known the Fletcher family for decades. They had no idea they were about to witness the exposure of a conspiracy that had been 18 months in the making. I sat in the front row with Madison and Sophie. My granddaughter looked beautiful in her flower girl dress, completely unaware that her future security was hanging in the balance. She waved at me with her little white-gloved hand, and I had to swallow hard to keep my composure. Brady stood at the altar in his tailored suit, his expression calm but his hands steady with purpose. Behind him, discreetly positioned near the altar, was a large presentation screen that most guests probably assumed was for displaying wedding photos or romantic messages. I knew better. Near the back of the room, I spotted Drew Patterson, the district attorney, sitting quietly among the other guests. To anyone else, he looked like just another wedding attendee. But I could see the alertness in his posture, the way his eyes constantly scanned the room. The officiant began with traditional words about love, commitment, and the sacred bonds of marriage. The venue smelled of white roses and expensive perfume. Soft classical music played from hidden speakers. Everything was exactly what a wedding should be, except for the lies that were about to be exposed. "We gather here today," the officiant intoned, "to witness the union of Brady Fletcher and Tiffany Morrison in the bonds of holy matrimony." Tiffany's smile could have lit up the entire state of Montana. She was moments away from legal access to our family's legacy, and she knew it. The ceremony proceeded through readings, blessings, and traditional vows. Every word felt like a mockery now, knowing what I knew. But Brady stood there calmly, playing his part perfectly, waiting for the exact right moment. Then it came. "Brady Fletcher," the officiant said, turning to my son, "do you take this woman to be your wife, to have and to hold, to love and to cherish in sickness and in health, for as long as you both shall live?" The room held its breath. This was the moment Tiffany had been working toward for 18 months. The moment when my son would say yes and legally bind himself to her fraud. Brady looked directly at Tiffany for a long moment, and I saw something flicker across his face. Not anger, not hatred, but something like sadness for what might have been if she'd been a different person. Then he turned to face the gathered crowd. "Before I answer that question," Brady said, his voice carrying clearly to every corner of the venue, "there's something everyone in this room needs to hear." Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Tiffany's face went pale. Shane Morrison half stood from his seat, his expression shifting from confidence to alarm. "What are you doing?" Tiffany hissed, but her voice was lost in the growing whispers. Brady gestured toward the screen behind the altar. "Everyone needs to understand exactly who Tiffany Morrison really is, and why she wanted to marry me. It's all right here." The screen flickered to life. Tiffany's voice filled the ballroom, crystal clear and undeniably her own. "I'm marrying him for the land, nothing else. The old man is getting attached to me, which makes this easier. Once we get Brady to transfer the deed, we'll push Mason into a nursing home and liquidate everything." The reaction was immediate and explosive. Gasps echoed through the room. Several guests stood up, their faces twisted with shock and disgust. Someone near me whispered, "Oh my God, how could she?" But Brady wasn't finished. The second recording played Shane Morrison's voice, cold and calculating. "The property is worth $4.2 million now, but the railroad expansion will make it worth $12 million in 2 years. Mason Fletcher has no idea he's sitting on a gold mine." The crowd's reaction grew louder. I heard chairs scraping as people turned to stare at Shane, who was now frantically trying to push through the crowd towards some kind of exit. The third recording was the most devastating. Tiffany's voice discussing how they plan to use Sophie. "The little brat is actually useful." Mason's completely wrapped around her finger. "We'll use that attachment to manipulate him into signing documents." That's when the room truly erupted. A woman near the back actually screamed in outrage. Several guests were on their feet, pointing at Tiffany and Shane, their faces showing the kind of anger that comes from witnessing something fundamentally evil. Drew Patterson stood up from his seat, his movement commanding immediate attention. "I am Drew Patterson, District Attorney for Cascade County," he announced, his voice cutting through the chaos like thunder. "What we have just witnessed constitutes conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, and grand theft. All parties involved are under arrest." Police officers appeared from side exits almost instantly. They moved with the efficiency of people who'd been thoroughly briefed and strategically positioned. Tiffany collapsed to her knees, her white wedding dress pooling around her like spilled milk. "This isn't fair," she sobbed. "This isn't real." The recordings are fake, but Shane Morrison knew better. As the officers approached him with handcuffs, he looked directly at me with pure hatred. "You'll regret this, old man. You have no idea what you've just done." I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 58 years, but also feeling stronger than I had in months. "Mr. Morrison," I said, my voice carrying across the now silent ballroom, "what I've just done is protect my family, something you'll never understand." The trial 6 weeks later was swift and decisive. Drew Patterson presented 40 hours of recorded conversations, financial documents showing the planned fraud, and testimony from Brooke Campbell, another rancher's daughter from North Dakota who'd narrowly escaped a similar scheme 2 years earlier. Shane Morrison received 10 years in federal prison. Tiffany Morrison received 8 years. But the real victory came later, standing on the front porch of the Fletcher Ranch on a crisp October evening, watching Brady and Brooke Campbell plan their life together while Sophie practiced her rope tricks in the yard. My son had found real love with a woman who understood the value of family land and honest work. My granddaughter was secure in the knowledge that her legacy was protected, and I had learned something important about the strength that comes from standing up for what matters most. The Fletcher Ranch remains in Fletcher hands, as it should be, as it will be for generations to come. My name is Mason Fletcher. I'm 58 years old, and this is my story about the day my family fought back against greed and won.